Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Robots and Red Tape. As always, I'm your host, Nick Schutt, and everybody out there listening, really appreciate you. You guys are the best part of the show. It's awesome. Thank you for the support. Yeah, very, very happy to have my friend Lisa Shea Mundt with me here today. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Absolutely. And
Thank
we're
you for
gonna
letting me bully you into inviting me.
You had to I don't believe you had to bully me.
Just a
I
little
believe
twist.
just a little
Little
bit. Just a
twist.
little bit. Yeah. No, and so for everybody that doesn't know, today we're talking about AI in business development, specifically in federal business development. So, Lisa, for folks that don't have the opportunity and pleasure to know you yet, you mind tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got here?
Certainly. So, name Lisa Shea Mundt. I've been in federal procurement, sales, proposal management for the last 14 years. About 8 years ago, business partner Amber Hart and I decided to do our own thing, become entrepreneurs because we are otherwise unemployable, is the
Mhm.
joke that we tell ourselves. We really help our clients in looking at business development from all sides. We call it BD 360, business development from policy through proposals. So we help folks look at and identify opportunities and qualify them and vet them, but also starting with policy and congressional and legislative moves and looking at how the Hill impacts contracting all the way through capture proposals and orals coaching.
Oh, awesome. No, that's fantastic. And how did you fall into this world and what led you to co-found Pulse of GovCon? And as I am also unemployable, so I totally understand. Yeah.
There's something about autonomy that is just so delicious that it's
Hmm.
it's hard to pass up. So how did I get here? A lot of people say they fall into federal contracting by accident. Mine was certainly by design. My father was in industry. He's legacy bigwig at large companies, systems integrators, and I was the only kid at camp whose letters from her father would talk about contract wins
Nice.
and how different companies would come together and subcontract and how they would have to badge switch different employees over. And it was a whole hoopla. So, I grew up in industry. I knew that proposals made daddy tired, in that he was very frustrated by them, but I was a writer. And so it was a natural progression for me to move into federal proposal writing, which is really where I got my start in industry.
Well, that's fantastic. And with the AI revolution, right? And everybody's talking about AI for BD and AI in proposals and using AI to write proposals and everything. What are some of the biggest misconceptions or pure fantasies that you're seeing right now?
People want AI to be an easy button. And when I say I've been doing proposals for 14 years, Amber and I like to call ourselves recovering proposal managers. We very easily could have just continued doing proposals, been a proposal director or center director, and just keep going in our career and drilling down. But proposals are an exhausting
Hmm.
exercise. And there's so much red tape and process and details and deliverables that in order to really devote your whole self to it, we always said it was bad for the skin. We said if
Hmm.
you're just like only doing proposals all day, it's
Yep.
gonna show. It's
Hmm.
you're gonna feel it in your
Yeah.
bones. And I we do every single time we work a proposal effort. Actually, our employee Haley, when she had started with us as an intern, she said that she started dreaming about the proposal that she was on, and we said, "Welcome, you've made it." If
Yeah.
you're dreaming about that proposal, and that's why software developers and AI implementers and all of that have been like, wow, this is a problem.
Hmm.
Proposals are a problem to solve. They've been saying it forever, though. I remember 11 years ago, I was sitting in a basement at a large telecoms company, and somebody showed me just a macro that they had designed in order to create an acronym list. And
Hmm.
we were like, wow, incredible technology taking away this administrative task.
Hmm.
And that's what a lot of people have been trying to do for years. Now, the issue now is that they are trying to use it as an overarching solution to the proposal problem. Let's develop these proposals faster, better, quote
Hmm.
unquote, cheaper, certainly, depending on how big your team is. But the issue is there's no point and click solution. And that's the fantasy right now. If you just say, hey, I got to start putting together proposals, but I don't want to hire a proposal manager or work with a proposal consultant, I just am going to use this tool to sort of outsource the process. That's not happening in the way that people want it to.
Right. In a way that I would assume in a way that writes a winning proposal as well, right?
Writes a winning proposal or even just writes a working proposal,
Yeah.
right? I think that's so often, we use technology for everything,
Hmm.
and we've all gone through such shifts in how we use tech in work. I mean, the fact that like we're on Zoom right now doing a podcast when you used to have to go into the studio, like things
Yep.
are constantly shifting and moving. But the joke is always that technology will fail you to a
Oh yeah.
certain point, right? As it is developing. So a
Hmm.
lot of people that have been early adopters in this, it's not only that they're not creating winning proposals, but the proposals might not even be created depending on the tool set that you're using and the infancy it is in its life cycle.
Hmm. Absolutely. And let alone like, and I mean, compliance is a huge deal, obviously. You have the period in the wrong place, your proposal will get thrown out, right? I mean, that's a bit dramatic, but only a little bit. Um,
Definitely happens.
yeah, absolutely. And so, and that's something that I'm certainly not ready to trust AI to do is like help me figure out what the compliance actually is. I know we like where do you think AI does fall short today, specifically, and why?
So it's funny you talk about the period being in the wrong place. One of the areas that proposal AI is falling short currently is in the desktop publishing arena.
Hmm.
And you talked about compliance and getting thrown out for the wrong period. And yeah, that's excessive. Probably not.
Hmm.
However, something for as long as I can remember hearing is that GAO protest attorneys have said when our clients are protesting, the first thing we look at is whether or not the file has been submitted in accordance with desktop publishing instructions in
Hmm.
the solicitation.
Hmm.
Because if it wasn't, and you're using the wrong font or the
Yep.
wrong size or the wrong line spacing between
Hmm.
paragraphs, something that AI isn't doing correctly right now is implementing Microsoft styles efficiently, is
Hmm.
it's doing a hard return between paragraphs instead of like an automatic 0 6 between
Hmm.
lines. Like for, if you know, you know, right?
Yeah,
Like if you're
absolutely.
really into the minutia of the document design. And so that's one area that certainly I haven't seen at least
Yep.
a tool meet those
Yeah.
needs yet.
I haven't seen a tool that can also can build the right like build compelling graphics as well, right? Because
Right.
that's a huge piece of it, right? Or like understands like when and where to put call out boxes and what those are used for, right? Like it may be able to even if it could write you like the most amazing content ever, there's still all these other areas that are incredibly important.
Yeah, you don't get like the concept of like a ConOps, a concept of operations, right? Like AI can't develop that. It can help you outline it, it can help you structure it, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly when it comes to building graphics, no, not in the way that you would want, not in a prompting type of
Hmm.
method, right? Of like, now build me this graphic.
Hmm.
And yeah, all of those other sort of visual rhetorical elements, like you were talking about the call out boxes or a table or a feature benefit, sort of the
Hmm.
classic elements of the genre that we're used to.
Yeah.
It's really hard to translate that into technology.
Yeah, no, 100%, absolutely. And so conversely, what are some of the best use cases for AI as you think about BD? And where should we, because obviously it's super powerful tools, where should we be trying to apply this to in an effective way?
Yeah, and you know what? I still use AI every day. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
going to pretend like I don't. A lot of
Yeah.
people look at me in my background and they've always been like, well, you're a proposal manager. You're afraid that AI is going to take your job. And I've seen a lot of AI and it's certainly not going to take my job.
Nope.
And unless the government starts standardizing things in a wildly different
Yeah.
way, then it's not going to take anyone's job because
Hmm.
the way that the system is built doesn't allow for it.
Yep.
So, where does it work? It works in concept ideation, right? I love using it for brainstorming. I love using it for first draft material or make something sound like X, Y, and Z. So, here's information I already have. Turn it into a statement of work. Like, use the elements of that genre and
Hmm.
apply it to the content that I'm trying to create. I use it for administrative tasks too. If you need to outline something. Not that I'm saying you should use AI to shred a solicitation because it's still pretty touch and go.
Hmm.
There's just a lot that needs to be that's just too subjective,
Yeah.
right? To in order for it to really capture. But I mentioned before, like the acronym list, like doing these sort of admin tasks that take a long time and that
Hmm.
are very administratively burdensome. That's where AI in proposals can shine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the your point around research and ideation and thinking, like that's absolutely it. Like I would always much, especially now, like I would much rather ask AI something than like go in and, Google it, because there's just so much BS on the internet, frankly, that it's just hard to actually figure out what's real and what's not.
Right. With one caveat, and I will say that AI, just like general AI right now, is
Hmm.
not helpful in contract opportunity identification.
No?
People are trying. I get it. I can see some benefits of it, but it is just if you like were to ask like
Hmm.
ChatGPT, what opportunities are coming out for HHS under
Right.
this specific NAICS code? It
Hmm.
is going to give you some nonsense gobbledygook that is not going to be helpful.
Hmm.
And you mentioned like just the straight Google, right? I
Yeah.
will say when it comes to some elements, the Google bar or the search bar on agency websites are still the best way
Hmm.
to research, right? If you're looking for a forecast for DHA, go to the DHA website and type in forecast and see
Hmm.
what comes up because
Right.
it's not, and I've tried it both ways, right? I've tried
Hmm.
it through sort of open AI and I've tried it through the direct method, and the direct method is always easier in that case.
So I agree with you there. What I will say is something that like I would like to do is when I'm looking at something, I'll pull down the SOW and then take past performances and say, all right, how similar are these to the SOW, and what are some and what are some areas that we should be looking at from but I'm the one that went out and found the opportunity to begin with.
And that's the nexus right there, right? And
Hmm.
that's why these sort of like you looking up or matching by NAICS and AI that's like, well, based on your NAICS codes or your PSC codes that you've put
Hmm.
in or your keywords, this opportunity is perfect for you. And it pulls from things like the contract title and the description and the codes. But to your point, for federal contracting, you have to go a layer further. You
Hmm.
have to look at the statement of work and the
Yeah.
PWS because things are consolidated and they're embedded and they're buried in there that might say, oh, wait, this
Hmm.
actually does match my capabilities.
Right.
And that's the level of research that you have to hit in order to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can also, if you weren't specifically working on the project, you may not know everything, and then you can go through and it'll be like, all right, well, this match is about 65, 70%. And there's like it's a really good it's a good way to go about it, I think. And it's a good way to your point, go a level deeper and then organize it in a way that's let's just say less mentally taxing, because that's the attention and the focus that's more important than, I mean, that and time are my most important resources on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
100%. So yeah, and do you use AI in like oral presentations and framework design, and have you used it to help people like do those aspects of it?
Absolutely. So my favorite part of federal procurement right now in the life cycle is the oral slash challenge component of federal sales, right? We're at
Hmm.
the end. You maybe have put together a traditional written proposal, but now it's time for you to present on it. And
Hmm.
it's been around forever. I mean, it's been around at least 30 years. It was added to the FAR back in the late 90s. And so it's not anything new, this idea of having to present, but it's become way more in vogue, right? Way more in
Hmm.
fashion, especially after we hit 2020, where all the in-person presentations got canceled and we were able to move to a virtual format. It became all the easier for the government to add this as their source selection like methodology.
Hmm.
So I absolutely use AI in orals, and as a coach, a lot of times it's very difficult for subject matter experts to write down what it is they know.
Hmm.
And they could be SMEs in their field, but I don't know if you've ever talked to a tech guy or an engineer, but they don't want to write it down. And it's hard to sort of follow this this structured format of how to effectively present something, especially in a
Hmm.
time constraint, because oral presentations aren't difficult until you have a ticking time clock and
Right.
multiple cooks in the kitchen. You
Hmm.
might think, oh, we got 90 minutes, but if you have 90 minutes and six people that are really good at what they do,
Hmm.
that time is going to fly.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so we will use AI to do things like record and transcribe sort of stream of conscious thought
Yeah.
when we're talking about how to solution something, how to present something, because it's
Hmm.
also different than how we write.
Yes.
And so we're able to do that and then use AI to be like, okay, what did that person just say?
Mhm.
Was there a process? Were there steps involved? A lot of times, SMEs, I'll be like, well, what's the process? And they say there is no process. And I say, everything has a process.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely.
you put on your pants in the morning, there's a process. It's
Hmm.
probably one leg at a time. If
Yeah.
it's not, then that's an innovative process and you
Hmm.
need to explain. You got to share that, right? Do you just jump into them?
I
Because
would pay to see people do that. I'm not
the
gonna
people got to know.
lie.
But that's what I mean. And so if you're able to ask AI based on what this person just said, what's the process?
Yeah.
What are the steps? Are there
Hmm.
phases?
Hmm.
And it's able to summarize that just automatically. That is so helpful. It can help write scripts. It
Hmm.
can help just like bulletize, something that somebody that's very robust in how they speak what they just said.
Hmm.
So yeah, I use that all the time.
Yeah, and it can also distill out like what's actually important in what they're saying because, I've interviewed a lot of SMEs, right? Obviously, with my background, I've been interviewing people for years, and being able to like a lot of them are their minds move faster than they can talk. And they have trouble organizing what they're saying in a way, and also then distilling down all of their knowledge because they know so much into what matters for this, right? And what matters for this conversation. And I think that's like the people that can are the ones that you want to have in front of your customers. But then you also need to have like helping them on like really distill down to what's really important is awesome.
Right. And I mean, that's called the rhetorical situation, which
Hmm.
is based on your audience and the context that you find yourself, it's
Hmm.
going to change how you communicate.
Hmm.
So, to your point, if you're really getting into the weeds with somebody, then you might talk a certain way to a certain level of detail. But
Hmm.
if you're in the context of like an oral presentation for federal procurement, what I have to keep telling the SMEs is you're also trying to win, right? You're
Hmm.
trying to sell, you're trying to persuade the
Hmm.
government that you're the ideal offer. So how do you
Hmm.
do that? And how do
Yeah.
you change that sort of framework and how can you show them, hey, here's the challenge, here's our assumptions, here's our plan, our experience, our benefit, and then
Mhm.
how do you bucketize that information in that way? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's a great use case.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what you mentioned is even more important for small businesses, right? Because like nobody gets fired for hiring Deloitte to solve a problem, right? Because of their reputation, and or Booz Allen can just they can have a massive contract canceled because of whatever. Their stock price might take a little hit, but they'll be fine, right? Folks like us in the smaller space, if we make mistakes and we have our margin for error is just a lot smaller, which is why we need to be so much tighter and be so much more on point.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's also what differentiates you. And there's
Hmm.
a reason, and I'm sure we're going to get more into this just based on our prior conversations that we've had in life. But like, I think that this is the way the market is moving, this
Hmm.
idea of presenting your expertise. And I do think it's also sort of the juxtaposition to the
Hmm.
AI craze. And so we're going
Yeah,
to see a lot more of it.
I completely agree. I also believe that first it's it'll mitigate things like the bait and switch tactics where people will have a different key personnel, right? No, you can come and you can see the team, you can see who you're working with, right? I was just at an agency last week and they've reinstated interviews for all their people. Like they've reinstated it. They went away from it, but they just brought all the interviews back. They want to sit and talk with the team that they're actually going to be working with and who's going to be solving this problem because that's huge. Like you need to
Yeah.
be, you're not, you're buying you're buying a team, you're buying a solution. You want to know who's actually going to be involved and you want to talk to them beforehand, which is reasonable, I think.
Yeah, it's a culture fit too. It's just like
Hmm.
any sort of hiring. To your
Yeah.
point, is knowing what it is that you're getting and the type of people that you're going to be working with every day.
Yeah, nobody wants to work with an asshole, right?
You'd be surprised.
Mm, I definitely would.
Maybe, maybe you wouldn't
Maybe
be.
not. Maybe not. Now, one thing I do like to do though, is like when I have a draft of the proposal, right? I'll go out and find a whole bunch of material and a whole bunch of public statements and documents that have been the agency has put out. And if you know who's going to be on the source selection committee, that they will like, how do they even talk, right? And what are they talking about and what's important? I'll take the proposal and then I'll take all these and I'll drop it in and I'll say, hey, make this personal to them, right? Take all these things, add it in, and then show me specifically where you did it and show me why and tell me why you did it in those places.
That's a really good point. It's actually something that about maybe a year and a half ago, Amber and I were at an event and somebody raised their hand saying, like, hey, there is a tool that's being used more commercially, but to your point, it will analyze the leads that you have and then assess based on their publicly facing sort of social media or any other like interviews how it is that they communicate. So it will help you set the tone in terms of formality and like whether or not they connect with people more based on stories or if, we all have different business communication styles. Like what's
Mm-hmm.
the one like the dominant interpersonal like it's all
Hmm.
these tests, right? Where some people
Yeah.
are very bottom line up front and others
Hmm.
really get into the details. And depending on who it is you're selling to,
Hmm.
AI will be able to assess how to best communicate with them. So that's
Hmm.
another use case. I haven't seen it a lot in GovCon, but I know it's out there.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I'll just use ChatGPT for it or
There you
whatever.
go.
Pull all them down and throw them in there because like again, what you say matters a lot less than how you say it, right? One of the biggest communication skills I've ever learned is making sure that you're presenting the right information to the right people so that they can not just hear you, but like receive it, right? Because listening and receiving are two different things.
Oh yeah, and then retaining it too. That's like
Mhm.
sort of the third part. You can receive it, but if it doesn't stick with you, then it
Yeah,
hasn't done anything.
correct. No, absolutely, 100%. And I know you told me when we were talking, earlier, you told me a story about this vendor who claimed that they cracked the code on AI, but for specifically for one contracting officer. Can you tell that story and then like, tell
I
me how?
can
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can tell that story. And if this gentleman, who I do not remember his name, I
Hmm.
have never spoken to him again. If he hears, because I tell the story constantly, because I
Nice.
think it is so funny.
Hmm.
So a couple of years ago at this point, people will DM me in LinkedIn and be like, I would love to have a meeting with you. And for a
Hmm.
long time, I was like, yes, I will have a meeting with anybody. Now I'm
Hmm.
too tired,
Yeah.
but I'll still
Hmm.
mostly take the meeting, right?
Hmm.
So this guy cold called me and was like, hey, I want to tell you about this tool. Like, I've cracked the code. I can do what you do in the click of a button. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, great. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more,
Hmm.
sir. And so we sat down and he's like, yeah, so I click a button and we win contracts. And I was like, cool, what do you mean? And he's
Hmm.
like, well, we started doing this and all of a sudden we lost like seven proposals, but then we won the third, or the eighth, ninth, and tenth. And I
Hmm.
was like, okay, so you lost seven and then you won three, and now you think that this is just going to keep you winning. And he was like, yes. And I was like, and this is for the entirety of the government. And he was like, no, this is for Navy. And I was like,
Hmm.
cool. So this is for the entirety of the Navy. And he was like, no, it's for NAVSEA. And I was like, cool. So it's for the entirety of NAVSEA. And he was like, no, it's just this like one contracting officer that this has worked on. And I
Hmm.
was like, okay, so you've taken like broad strokes.
Yeah.
I've completely cracked the code. Are you going to do this for every contracting officer in the United States government? Because, my dude, you're going to be doing this for a long time.
There's a
And
lot.
then people move. So if it's really that person dependent, then you haven't really solved anything,
Hmm.
right? And there was still a lot of basis of error there too, where you had to lose so many times and you've invested all of this time and energy and money to
Hmm.
like, yes, eventually win the next three contracts that you probably could have won if you had just written those
Right.
proposals at
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
point. So that's the joke here. And the reason I tell it is because the reason I haven't been scared about the way that AI is being used on the proposal development side is that there is not a standardized format for procurement across the entirety of the United States government.
Hmm.
There simply isn't. There isn't on the way that we report data. There
Hmm.
isn't on the way that, solicitations are released. We always say different families do different things,
Hmm.
or it depends.
Hmm.
People constantly, I want to do work with the government. So when I read a solicitation, this will be here, here, and here, right? Well, it depends. All
Hmm.
right, what about past performance? Do I need to have past performance? Well, it depends.
Hmm.
And it's that constantly, and it's so dependent. It's so not even contracting officer by contracting officer, it's solicitation by
Yep.
solicitation.
Hmm.
So there is no one size fits all for
Hmm.
responding to them because there is not one size fits all solicitation
Right.
like mechanisms to
Hmm.
create them.
Yeah.
And I see that changing. I'm sure that's going to change. And I'm sure that's how the government is going to start leveraging AI to develop the actual requests for proposal.
Yeah.
And then industry will be able to respond in that way. But
Hmm.
until that happens, you're going to be hard pressed to find a point and click, right?
Yep. And how long do you think it would take for that to happen?
Oh
Knowing
my
what you know
God.
about the government.
I mean, you know what? We're seeing it little by little. So we're
Hmm.
seeing different sub agencies sort of adopting AI tools, but then they're different AI tools
Hmm.
too. So it's not even the same one. The government isn't even doubling down into one AI tool, right? It's like
Probably
it's
good.
right, it is good, but it's still the same thing, right? Now you're going to have government contractors making AI tools to
Hmm.
help them better acquire from other government contractors. Like
Yeah.
the cycle continues.
Hmm. Absolutely. 100. And DC keeps spinning, right?
You
That's what
know?
we do here, you know? And how do you coach your clients about sensitive proposal and pricing data and especially as it relates to, LLMs?
What I would say is that, oh my gosh, please don't put it out there because people are looking for it, right? I mean, that's like one of the first things that I've had some clients say this month about an active project that they're on is they were like, well, we know that there have been some presentations, so the first thing I'm gonna do is start looking to see if any Dumbo posted it somewhere,
Mhm.
right? To
Yeah.
see what other people are.
Your audio cut out. Your audio cut out? Oh no. Your audio cut. You disappeared. Your audio disappeared.
What's that?
Your audio disappeared in the
Oh,
middle of that. I don't know what happened there.
oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So,
So let's pause and
yeah, well,
ask that question again.
I'll have this section cut out. I'll just, yeah, let me pull this up. All right, do.
Yeah, ask the question again.
So, as how do you coach your clients about, uh, sensitive proposal and sensitive pricing data and how they should, operate with that especially as they put it into LLMs?
I'm telling them not to put
Hmm.
it any place that's open source. I mean, so many of my clients at least have built their own custom LLMs. Like that's what you're seeing. That's what the big companies are doing too.
Hmm.
Or they're buying licenses that are like guaranteed to only house their information. But I'll say that what I do know is that clients are looking out for whatever Dumbo is going to post things
Yep.
publicly, right?
Hmm.
Like that's the first thing that people are looking for is they're saying, "Hey, I know that presentations have been made to the government. I'm going to see if somebody put it out there already, and I'm
Hmm.
going to see what ChatGPT or other AI can pull for me."
Yeah.
So you have to be so careful about the sensitive data. It
Hmm.
is just best practice to have your own internal AI repository, LLM model, whatever,
Hmm.
and just feed that so that and so many people I know consultants are doing that too to make it sound like you, to have your tone, to have only your information and not pull externally.
Hmm.
So that's best practice. Just don't be putting stuff out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Don't be putting public sensitive data into because I know of a situation where a gentleman there was some like internal he had an internal, and I forget the exact business that he's in, but he had an internal diagram that he had made that specifically showed their process, right? Specifically, and he put it into one of the LLMs out there, and then like 2 months later, he saw that graphic on his biggest competitor's website.
Bananas. But
Yeah.
also, yeah, you have to keep these things close hold. It's the same way that you wouldn't share it, you wouldn't send it via email to somebody, so don't put it in ChatGPT.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's exactly right. Although I do wonder if there are ways to use that to generate misinformation, or I don't know if that's like just too far, like
You
counter intel.
You're going to like corporate espionage. You're
Yeah.
like, let's burn things to the ground. I'm going to put goofy stuff out there. Never
Hmm.
let them know your next move.
Correct.
Honestly, I appreciate the chaos.
Yeah, no, listen, if what's life without a little bit of chaos? You
Yeah.
know, it's not, well, I guess it's not having children, but hey, that's neither here nor there.
And I'm tired again.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And so as I'm sure you've had a lot of these conversations with small businesses, and your clients, either your clients or people that are, potentially your clients. But what do you tell people when they're tempted to buy expensive, proposal AI subscriptions, and what do you think they should ask these companies before they buy?
Right. I think that there's a lot of questions that they need to ask. One of them is what happens if it breaks? What
Hmm.
happens if it stops working? And that's a question that a lot of people that build software are not going to love to answer, but they should be able to answer, right? Like
Hmm.
what's going to happen if all of a sudden the system doesn't work?
Hmm.
Who on your team is going to make this work for me? If the idea is to do this in a timely manner and then time becomes an issue because something isn't working, what's the backup plan?
Hmm.
What else do you have access to? Also asking about privacy, proprietary information, making sure that it's not feeding some larger model.
Hmm.
Um, I think asking the actual software vendors these questions is one thing, but asking your team questions is equally important. And
Hmm.
one of the first questions that I would say a small business needs to ask themselves is, are you going to use this tool? Are
Hmm.
you actually going to adopt the usage of this software? And it's not just a proposal AI thing. I'm not saying that just for this type of tool. Anything, any CRM,
Hmm.
any pipeline tool, any anything, right? Like any tracking of what
Hmm.
you're going to be doing, project management. A tool and a software is only as good as the employees who are going to choose to adopt it.
Hmm.
And if they're simply not going to use it, then you are going to have wasted your money. You're
Yep.
going to have invested in something that is going to sit on the shelf. And we've all done it, right? We're
Mhm.
going, oh, this tool is going to make us better.
Yep.
I'm sure people do it in New Year's with a treadmill. It's like, well, I'm going to spend the $1,500 on a treadmill instead of buying this because like
Hmm.
I'm going to do this. If you're not going to get your butt on the treadmill, then you're not going
Yeah.
to,
Correct.
then it's just going to sit there and collect dust. And the same thing goes for proposal AI. And it is a different way of thinking
Hmm.
using these tool sets, even for a very established proposal manager. To
Hmm.
now say, okay, I'm not doing things manually. I have to go through a completely different process to
Hmm.
input information and to know how to prompt. Like you
Hmm.
have to train your staff to be able to use it, and you have to invest that time to
Hmm.
get them read up on it. And then you also have to enforce the usage of it,
Hmm.
right? Because if it's not tied to like their key performance indicators or anything like that, and if you don't have accountability from the top that's also going to use the tool and look for information in the tool,
Hmm.
if you have a CEO that's still going to be like, email me the proposal instead of look at the AI tool,
Hmm.
then nothing's going to change.
Correct. Absolutely.
You
Another
have to
thing,
adopt it.
yeah, you have to adopt it. And one thing that I always tell people that when they're talking about these things, super important is where does that data reside? Like
Mm.
where like and not just like with which service, but like which country is it in, right? Where because there's a lot of different rules around how data is stored and obviously you think about these massive companies like a Amazon or a Google or whoever, they have data centers all over the world, right? And just because and as and sometimes they just move data around internally on these different to these different data centers, and you have no idea, you don't know, but like you have information that can leave the country and come back in, and then people can grab it up and like what and where does it live and how are they securing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I
You
mean,
know?
it's a scary world out there, but when it comes to cybersecurity, like we all have to be as vigilant as we can.
Hooray, CMFC.
Please don't.
Oh my God, I know it's so much fun. Are you having to go through that right now?
No, I'm not. And if I ever have to hear those four letters again, I feel like it's Groundhog Day. Like I
Mhm.
get it, I know. I don't want to talk about it
Yeah.
anymore.
Get it. No, I totally understand. And a lot of these AI AI proposal tools that were only, they were only selling to large businesses are now coming down and starting to sell to small, like mid and small, mid sizes and smalls. What does that tell you about the market and the value that they're actually delivering?
I feel like you're baiting me here, because I I think this is an important question. And so all I'll say is this: if you've seen a shift from organizations that focus on one segment of the market to another, it's because what they were doing probably isn't yielding what they were expecting. And they're trying to diversify, which there's nothing wrong with diversification. But something that you should ask yourself is if a company is more targeted towards servicing enterprise large businesses, are they really going to care about me, the small?
Hmm.
That's all I would say that for anything, right? For a law firm, for an accounting firm, for if their market is the large business and you're an 8A, or you're sort of like a mom and pop shop, you're probably not going to receive the same attention than if
Hmm.
you went to a company that was focused more on small businesses, period.
Hmm.
Because time, attention, expertise, like all of that is going to be leveraged towards the cash cows for them.
Of course.
And you as a small business, even if you're paying 20 grand to 40 grand a year, which is going to be, pennies on the dollar for some of these large companies, but it's not for
Mhm.
you. And so find somebody that's going to be more appreciative of your time and your investment.
That's right. There are companies that are set up to where 20 or 40 grand is like that's their ideal customer and they're happy for that,
Yeah,
right? And they'll give you all the time and attention you need. But if you have, if it's me giving them 20K and say Microsoft is giving them $20 million, right?
exactly.
They're not going to talk. They don't care. They don't care. But do you think that shift is showing that they're not delivering the what's promised truthfully?
I think the shift is showing that large companies are building their own. Large companies aren't really going out to the market. People
Hmm.
will say they are, and maybe they are fine, but like
Hmm.
the good ones, the ones that are already IT software developing companies, they're
Hmm.
building their own.
Yeah.
They're not going out to the market. They're not going off the shelf. They
Yeah.
are doing custom to
Hmm.
what they need.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think the shift is showing us about the market.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing with banks, like you like the Chases and the Wells Fargos and the Capital Ones of the world. They have their own proprietary software stack, right? Their own internal stuff that they developed. The Bank of America's they develop, but all the, mid-size and smaller banks, they all are off the shelf from they all have their own, they're all just like stitching vendors together, right?
Mhm.
And I know we both see that when we log into our bank accounts. So hey.
Seriously. Oh my gosh.
Hmm. Absolutely. And where do you think AI is most promising for government in this space, and where do you think it becomes more risky and more opaque,
I think it's going,
as it relates to like evaluations,
yeah.
compliance, things like that, right?
I think it's going to help some of the administrative burden on the government side. I do think it's going to be, okay, let's do a first run of a compliance check,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like let's take a look. Let's see, have they hit all of the requirements that are important to me? Maybe not every single requirement, but all the ones that are important to me. Check, 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 check. And
Hmm.
they look, this is nothing new. The government's been using software to do that already for
Hmm.
years. But
Hmm.
I think to make it smarter, easier, cheaper, faster. Like we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. I
Hmm.
also think, like I said before, creating the requirements, helping in that sort of acquisition strategy, helping with market research if it's even still mandatory in the next
Hmm.
year or two. I don't know. I feel like I can't hang my hat on anything anymore.
Yeah.
So if they have to do market research, AI can certainly help with that. Scour things, look at one pagers, capability sheets, sort different vendors into different categories. I think that
Hmm.
that's going to be a great place for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you think it really becomes risky though, and where do you think they're going to try to use it where they shouldn't be?
I think it becomes risky when it comes to areas of subjectivity. And that's where, when we're building data models, when we're working with AI, AI is not making decisions, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's where the human element comes into place. Like it, depending on how you define decision, right? If it's point A or point B and it needs to choose one or the other, then like that's a choice. But to be able to rationalize that in a human way is not
Hmm.
something that it has the capacity to do. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because the way that we currently do solicitation and proposal evaluation is very subjective. And
Hmm.
so if you have things like, a confidence rating, which you see a lot, like how do you explain to the AI what it means to have high confidence in somebody if it
Hmm.
doesn't even really have like a standard FAR definition as it is?
Right.
So it's like, so that's where things get clunky.
Yeah. How do you really determine what best value is, right?
Exactly. Best value is not defined in the FAR. Like
Hmm.
we don't say what that means. Like we as humans know what it means to value something, but the language itself is clunky, where it's
Hmm.
not objective. It's not A or B. It's
Hmm.
like, well, there's weighted here.
Yep.
There's weighted criteria, and there's ways that like I feel about something and my counterpart feels about something, and then we have to sort of meet in the middle to compromise. Like that's the subjectivity of language and of evaluating something. So
Hmm.
that's where I think AI is going to have a hard time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's I mean, but we talk about it all the time. Like one of the most used buzz phrases in the AI space is human in the loop, right? It's like this is why, right? This is the human in the loop piece. And I had somebody on earlier this year, way earlier this year. They have a tool that's deployed at one of the SIBRs, right?
Mm,
And their tool, what it does is, I mean, obviously it's a high volume proposal game, right? From a reviewing perspective, they review all of them coming in for compliance, and then they route it to the best person who so
mhm.
to evaluate them. So right, oh, this person has, say, a whole bunch of experience in cybersecurity. Let's send them the cybersecurity ones, as opposed to sending them ones about energy, right? Great use. That's a
That
great
makes
use of
sense.
it, right? Makes a lot of sense, but you're not having them make the decisions about who needs to get money and who doesn't.
Exactly.
Which would be a disaster, I think.
It would. It
Hmm.
would.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll ask it right now. Like, should Lisa win this contract? And it's gonna try to spin it to the positive and tell me why I should, no matter
Hmm.
what, right?
Yeah.
Like it won't be critical in the way that you need it to. And especially in the way that we operate for acquisition right now, where things can be heavily protestable. Like we want to make sure that we're mitigating that in advance. And so like that's why parity and everything is so important in what
Hmm.
we do every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And then, around the far overhaul that just happened, or is still happening, I'm not sure. What do you think is actually driving that, and why do you think it's actually being done right now?
I have feelings. Why is it happening right now? But let's see. Let's rewind, back up. Does it need to happen? Yeah, there are some elements of the FAR that absolutely need to be rewritten. Why is it happening right now? We talked about chaos to to just instill chaos in the market.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the pessimist in me. Look, things need to be changed in the FAR. However, I think when we look at things like regulations that are considered bulky and clunky and cumbersome, what we forget is that there's a history to have gotten us there. And I
Hmm.
think just as an industry, we do have blinders over the cyclical nature of how things have changed for us.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
talked about like orals presentations coming back in vogue. It's because it's just like fashion, where all of a sudden things are fashionable again.
Hmm.
Like what we're hitting right now is sort of like category management 2.0. We were just here about a
Hmm.
decade ago,
Yep.
and we saw what it did and how it impacted, and then we responded to it, and now we're sort of hitting back around.
Hmm.
So the reason and the rationale for a lot of this gray area that's put into the FAR is probably based on individual cases as
Hmm.
we've experienced them.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we can pull it all back out, we can pare it all down, but what we're going to find is we're still going to have those scenarios arise, and then we're still going to have to address them. And then it
Hmm.
is going to be helpful to codify the ruling
Hmm.
going forward.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there's definitely things in the FAR that can change. I love the idea of plain language. I mean, government started implementing plain language laws years and years and years ago.
Hmm.
And, we do it for sort of like general contract language too, where the
Hmm.
layman should be able to understand without having a legal degree.
Yep.
And the same thing should go for the FAR. I shouldn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be a lawyer to understand as a government contractor what I am required to
Hmm.
provide and perform. So all those things I'm on board with. I do think that it's going to be a lot of work for probably not a lot of benefit just based on the webinars that I've attended from the government saying what's going to happen and the FAR companion that I've been reading as it's been published. But who knows? I'm not a fortune teller. We'll see what happens.
Hmm. Yeah. What do you think, having looked at a bunch of it, what do you think some of the biggest gaps and or ambiguities that the FAR rewrite should address for procurement, in your opinion, especially with AI entering the process?
I'm going to bring it back to the oral presentations. I think that we are seeing language in the FAR Companion about how to use AI in the government and with industry. And
Hmm.
I think that there's been a lot of conflicting language around that over the past few years. And so at some point, the government's going to have to take a stance on whether or not it's kosher or not.
Hmm.
The joke was a year or two ago, whenever NASA Soup 6 was going
Yep.
on. I know it's still going on. I know
Yeah.
it's like we're still working on it. But I
Hmm.
remember one of the industry days, the program manager was like, "You better not use AI to put together NASA Soup 6."
Hmm.
And people were like, "Well, that's unrealistic. It's an unrealistic expectation." And they
Yep.
were able to cite case law where at one point the VA actually won a protest saying it was completely within their right to say that a vendor couldn't use a consultant on a
Hmm.
proposal. And so they use that to apply to AI, where the different agencies should have jurisdiction over what method is used to
Hmm.
respond.
Hmm.
So I think we probably need to see a lot more around that in the FAR and whether or
Hmm.
not they want industry to use AI and whether it's, how black and white it absolutely needs to be.
Hmm.
What I would like to see changed, what I would like to be see changed a lot is more guidance on how oral presentations are going to be evaluated
Hmm.
board in general. I think that when it came to proposals, proposals are already a subjective piece of work where you
Hmm.
can read it and you either like it or you don't. And you can
Right.
think, you can infer something or you don't. You move on to another section of the piece. When
Hmm.
it comes to presentations right now, the FAR doesn't account for any sort of stylistic elements of presentation.
Hmm.
And I think psychologically, I think communication studies wise, that's going to prove to be an issue as we move further and further. And the reason I'm saying this is because you can say, oh, I have confidence in a vendor based on the way that they've presented.
Hmm.
Well, I've done the due diligence and I've done the research on the types of protests that come through GAO, and the vendor community is starting to get PO'd saying, government, you evaluated me based on the way I presented and not what I presented. You know what, how you
Hmm.
said before, it
Yep.
matters what you said.
Hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it matters how you said it, the
Hmm.
optics of how you presented it. And
Hmm.
that's going to start impacting our community
Yeah.
and our government and who wins these opportunities because I think the government is going to use this as the way to address the AI,
Hmm.
usage that they see in
Yeah.
proposals.
Yeah.
So I think more surrounding there, more sort of like rubricized, for style in
Hmm.
terms of how you evaluate an oral presentation. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. No, but I also think that just because like if you don't do a great job of presenting the information, that says that you are not probably the best team to work with these folks, right? If they're because communication style is everything, right? I think there should be some subjectivity there.
There should be, and but to your point, like there are people that are brilliant that
Hmm.
can't put sentences together,
Yeah. Well, then they
and so
shouldn't be on that call.
yeah, but sometimes they need to be because they're
Hmm.
the SME,
Yeah.
then
Hmm.
it starts thinking back to how, it takes all sorts.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
everybody is bottom line up front. Not
Hmm.
everybody is that strong D dominant.
Yeah.
There's room for all voices in the
Of
choir, or
course.
so I've been told.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And yes, sometimes they do need to be there because they're key or they're the SME and they're the only one that can explain that piece. And of course, but that's where you need somebody like you to come in and coach them and tell them what to say, right?
and I do.
Exactly. Right. I know. I know. You have a whole business about it, right?
Imagine.
I know. I could barely. Yeah. And then how do you think that the overhaul should address clarity around ratings and evaluations?
I think that we need to move to one form. I think that, adjectival ratings of like outstanding and
Hmm.
satisfactory and blue and green and purple, but
Yeah.
now we're moving to more of that confidence. I think more surrounding how to show whether or not you're a low risk vendor. And
Hmm.
historically, the government has been risk adverse. Again, we're seeing some language that's coming in through EOs that is sort of steering away from that in the name of innovation. I don't know how much I buy that that's how things are going to go.
Hmm.
But just things like incorporating language to better exemplify why a vendor is a low risk solution for the government. And that's part of that best value, right? I mean, hell, let's define best value.
That'd
Let's
be great.
have that would be great. Let's
Hmm.
have like a full definition of what it means to be valuable. This is like existential, right? Like,
Hmm.
what does it mean to be of
Yeah, I
value?
guess it's a therapy session all of a sudden.
Constantly. That's what all of this is, right?
Yeah.
Language is a beautiful gift. Like,
Yeah.
so pulling that apart, I think would be
Hmm.
very helpful. I think again, moving away from the adjectival. Like I had a client just the other day and I looked at their debrief and they had lost. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh man, they lost. And it still said that they had no weaknesses and multiple strengths. And I was like, then what's the difference between good and exceptional, right? Like what's the difference between a strength and a significant strength? Who's determining that?
Hmm.
Like more around that, I think, and this is not in line with how things are going with the FAR where we're trying to do less, less, less. I'm like, let's do more, more,
Right.
more.
Absolutely. But there's good reasons around it, which would also do things like reduce ambiguity, which I think would also do things like reduce protest, right? And lead to like more functional more functional awards and less time spent in protest because like lawyers love it, but just because of their billing.
Like let's be prescriptive in some of these, and I am seeing that more and more too, just in evaluation criteria. And I mean, it's hard to argue with because a lot of times you either meet the criteria or you
Mhm.
don't.
Yeah.
If they are going to put in metrics and being like you need to have had past performance with at least 98 FTEs, even if the contract that you're going after is only 89 FTEs.
Hmm.
Like they're setting certain standards that you either meet or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that being prescriptive in solicitations and
Hmm.
in evaluation design is not a bad thing.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And the last question I have for you, Lisa, is that if you had a seat at the FAR Council table, what is the biggest change that you would want to make acquisitions more transparent and functional?
Oh my gosh. I think those are different answers. Let's talk a little bit about transparency, and it probably
Please.
has nothing to do with the actual FAR itself. Let's just say, like, Elise is
Mhm.
important and they're going to listen to me. What I would love is transparent data reporting on existing contracts.
Yeah, that would be
Can
great.
you imagine? I
Hmm.
mean, if we knew details, and I'll tell you a quick story.
Please.
Years ago,
Hmm.
our company worked with the Open Contracting Partnership, which was a not-for-profit out of the World Bank.
Hmm.
And their mission is to do open data standardization, like contract standardization,
Hmm.
across multiple countries. And they had implemented this sort of open data standardization process and model for different, like France and
Hmm.
Argentina and other folks like that. And they came over saying, what would it take to do this in the United States? And we said, whoa, this is this is a loaded question. They showed us all of the data fields that gets collected and then put out publicly in these other countries. And our response was like, we could never. We
Hmm.
could never because just culturally, that's not what the information is there for. I actually talked to somebody that was big at sam.gov when it had moved from beta to SAM. And I
Hmm.
said, well, what are you guys going to do about data transparency for industry? And she said, nothing. That
Hmm.
data is not for you. And I was aghast. And I was like, what do you mean it's not for industry? And she said, well, it's for congressional reporting. That's what it's there for. It's
Yeah.
not to help better inform your business development. And I was like, but shouldn't this information be transparent? Shouldn't we capture this accurately. And we saw the whole fallout of this in the Doge
Hmm.
era earlier this year. Like we saw this all happening where people didn't know how to read the FPDS reports. So yeah, let's
Hmm.
start there. Let's just there is so much that could be done in the way that we report information on our contracts that's if I had one wish that I could say, hey, let's fix this, let's break it and fix it,
Hmm.
that's where I would start.
I completely agree. I think that'd be great, not for business development, but also so we can actually understand what is being paid for, right? And as a taxpayer, I'd really, really like that, right? But that's not going to happen anytime soon, especially with some of these other agencies out here that we aren't allowed to talk about, right?
Yeah,
They'll never, ever, ever say what they're actually doing, right? And if
right.
you do know, you probably are going to get killed, right? Like, I mean, that's how they roll.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, security, but there's a lot of still area for transparency
Hmm.
that would not put anybody
I
at
agree.
risk.
I completely agree. No, I completely agree. I completely agree.
That
But
has my little asterisk, my little star. As long
mhm.
as people are safe.
Yes. Oh, listen, I agree. Safety is no accident. We need to be doing more of that. But I'm with you. I would love more more transparency from our government in general, about a whole lot of things that are going on and how decisions are being made and why certain people are getting, no bid contracts and things like that. And like, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, as you and I both know, that, is just, let's just say, uh, shady, sketchy, they'd much rather not have it be out there publicly. How's that?
Yeah, probably. I would say. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably the most kosher way to say that,
I
right?
don't know. Yeah, it's hard. I don't know how to be kosher about saying some of these
Me either.
things. And that's why I'm like,
Yeah. Absolutely. No, 100%.
this has
Yeah.
been me all of 25.
Yeah. Yeah. Eating popcorn and watching fireworks and hoping that you don't get hit too hard. So hey, we'll be okay.
We're doing great. Closing
Hmm.
out the year.
Yeah, 100%. It's December. It's awesome. And what are you looking forward to in 2026?
Just keep going, keep moving, keep saying what we got to say, keep helping people and hopefully improving the process and making things better.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Is there anything I missed, Lisa? Any points you'd like to make? Anything you'd like to add?
I think we covered it. These are the things that I care about, and these are the things that we're going to keep, like I said, working on,
Mhm.
researching, prognosticating, and talking to the industry and the community about it.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate you. Lisa, thank you so much for joining Robots and Red
Thank
Tape. This has been
you.
super fun. I had a great conversation. Everybody listening, thank you so much for listening to Robots and Red Tape. I hope you're having a great day.